I want to talk about the benefits of debate and why you should debate. I think there's three main critical skills that you gain by debating. Firstly, it's communication, because debate trains you to speak. And I think this is quite intuitive because when you go up there on that stage in front of other people and you have to give that 5-minute speech without any interruptions, where you have to be confident and where you have to persuade other people, that instills in you an ability to talk and to communicate much smoother and much more confidently. But secondly, it's because debate trains you to have a much, much better vocabulary because you have to use certain words to express things precisely. You have to fit a great amount of information where you have to express arguments, take down other people's arguments, and do so many other things in a short span of time. And this teaches you to be precise with your word use, that you have to explain many things in a single sentence. You can't repeat things like AI or ChatGPT might do, and you have to get straight to the point. And this communication skill, I think, is especially important because this is not just about talking in debate. This is about a skill that is crucial for the rest of your life. Whether it means you give a group presentation in school or when it's about your future career options, communication is a skill that you will use for the rest of your life. And when you are able to talk confidently, when you don't have to fear stage fright, you are much, much better prepared for the world and you're much, much better confident in terms of school, whether you get better marks on group presentations. This is also about language skills, though, because communication also means the ability to think faster, the ability to use words that sound important, words that convey a lot of information and sound impressive. And I think this language skill is particularly important for immigrants or people that might not be as familiar with the English language. And this teaches people English a lot faster than maybe reading a book might do. Secondly, and equally important, I think, is the ability to think on your feet, because debate teaches you to think really, really fast. You might think that it takes a long time for debate round to occur, and that's partially true. There are four teams with two speakers each. Each of those speakers talks for 5 minutes? So in the end, that's a 40-minute length of time. Even if you're the last speaker in that round, you don't have a lot of time. From the moment that you see that motion appear on the screen to the moment you have to get up on the stage and start speaking, there are only 50 minutes. In those 50 minutes, you have to figure out the arguments you are going to present. You have to figure out how you're going to respond to other people's arguments. You can't write your speech, you have to write notes. And this entire process goes by in a flash. So what debate teaches you is the ability to think fast, to improvise based on a small amount of words, and quickly figure out using your logic what is the best response to this in this situation, what is the logical steps you must take to debunk and take down other people's arguments. And this applies to a lot of other things other than just debate. For instance, this is greatly applicable in activities such as Model United Nations or mock trial or other school time extracurriculars and activities that you might want to consider. And this logical thinking skill is also important for your day-to-day life. For instance, it means the ability to win online arguments. It's the ability to stand a better chance in an argument with your parents. It's the ability to think on your feet in school and respond when your teacher asks you a question that is hard to answer. And this makes your life a lot easier. Thirdly, I think this is also important. It's about taking criticism. Sometimes you have to accept that you are completely wrong. There are going to be millions of instances when you debate in which you lose the round. It's impossible to win every single time. Debate is oftentimes subjective, wherein you get the side that is just inherently worse. For instance, like one side is just clearly right. You're on the other side. What can you do about it? Try your best, and if you lose, well, you have to accept that lost. You have to accept that you are ultimately wrong, and I think this is a great experience for you to cope with life and actually experience with defeat far better. But finally, I want to talk about debate as an extracurricular because obviously it's an activity in which you can gain accomplishments, where you can get prestige and where you can win glory. Debate is also a relatively high quality accomplishment to put on your academic records. Universities especially value prestige such as making a national team like Team USA or Team Canada, or success at really large, major, and prestigious tournaments. For example, tournaments like Harvard World Schools Championships, or Hart House, which is run by University of Toronto and has like over 400 participants every single year, are incredibly prestigious and genuinely worthwhile to put in your accomplishment. But I want to stress that debate is not just about the accomplishments. And this will lead you to become really competitive, toxic, and that oftentimes takes away from your experience of debate itself. It's worthwhile to look at debate not just as a potential resume filler to put on your accomplishments, but more importantly, as an activity that you genuinely enjoy, because this is what leads you to success. When you view debate as only something where you can gain prestige from, it makes you not enjoy it. You see it as a chore. But when you genuinely enjoy the process of thinking of arguments, of dealing with other people's arguments and responding to them, this is when you genuinely enjoy it and continue to do it. This is what gives you the perseverance and the determination to get better at debate and ultimately win those prizes. So I strongly encourage you to try to find joy in terms of community, in terms of traveling around the world, in terms of just purely calculating and having that logical ability to deduce and take down other people's arguments. But fourthly, I want to try a practical activity this time because oftentimes debate seminars get really boring and it's like tens of minutes of people talking to you nonstop. So I want to ask if we can get any volunteers to give a short 2-minute speech today. You can just raise your hand in the chat, and this is the topic you're going to talk about. If there are no volunteers, I'll take it upon myself to start calling on people. It's a 2-minute speech where you talk about whether or not you ought to ban zoos. So you support banning zoos or not banning zoos. I see some people unmuted. Okay, we can save this for later. Maybe I'll give a speech for this particular motion then. All right, I'm happy to take any questions you guys might have. Oh, thank you for the question in the chat. So I think that it's up to you. You're completely free to decide what you want to do in that 2-minute speech. Maybe I can give one first to demonstrate what it might look like. Just whatever you think might be persuasive and might get you like the most people who think that you're correct. Okay, I see one question in the chat. How should you construct the 2-minute speech? Personally, if I was the one giving the speech, here's what I would do. Firstly, I want to explain how this is going to be done. So usually it's the responsibility of the first team in the round to explain what it looks like to enact this motion. For instance, if I have to support banning zoos, I must first explain how banning zoos is going to work. I would first do that. Secondly, I'm going to explain in what cases and where this would happen, or what most zoos look like in the world. So for instance, I can explain that most zoos run like on deficit, that they don't make a lot of revenue or profit in cash, and that oftentimes people don't go to them very often. That's how I characterize what zoos are to the average person. And then I'm going to present my actual arguments. Perhaps the first one is that zoos are dangerous. Maybe the animals are being exploited in the zoos. Or maybe that they're just not worth the money at all, that it's not worth it to spend on zoos. Perhaps you should spend this money instead on things that are more important, like homelessness, like creating more houses, like food aid, or just in general some form of welfare that the average person would agree is probably more important than the pleasure you gain from going to a zoo. Maybe you would be brave enough to give that speech and explain why that's the case to everyone.
如果大家没有问题，我来替大家问一些问题。关于training course 的话，上课的形式大概是什么样的？描述一下。
This is an introduction to debate class, so I think for the first few classes, it's about explaining how debate actually works in further detail, explaining in what order you go up and give that speech, what you should think about when you see a motion for the first time. So for instance, if you see this particular motion, this house would ban zoos, what are some arguments and ways to think of arguments? And then because it's a 2-hour session, I think it makes most sense for us to try a group activity after that. For instance, a short 2-minute debate, as we tried in this one, in this seminar, to have people actually argue against each other and explain why each other's arguments are wrong and why you should consider your own arguments above others. And after the first few classes, it'll devolve into just a quick lecture on a particular topic that might be difficult for people to understand, and then just brief background knowledge on things you should know to debate. For instance, the recent news, how to debate things about politics. how to debate things about the environment, and then just a practice debate wherein people have to get up there and actually give their 5-minute speeches or try to give 5-minute speeches against others. And finally, I'll give short feedback to people in the round and explain where you ought to improve and perhaps who won the round if you really want to know.
非常感谢。那另外一个问题就是说，对于大家不熟悉这个 debate，包括对于 debate 比赛呢，也是很少了解。那能不能在这个就是开始辩论的这个 topic 这个题目上，可以选一些 household，就是譬如说，如果跟家长顶嘴，怎么讲的更有道理啊？怎么样能够在这个小 friends 之间有一些 conflict？怎么样去 present，或者是怎么样去 communicate，类似于这样一些可以让大家渐渐去进入这个，进入这个 brainstorming 怎么去辩论。
I'll get to MM in just after answering this question. So I think that this is not a thing you ought to focus on, and genuinely just not a thing you should be thinking about when you learn to debate. I don't think you should learn to debate to win fights with your parents. I don't think you should learn to debate to like win over your friends when you're in a gaming lobby either. I think that what debate will do though is that it will teach you the logic you need to calm down, to calculate things, and to decide what you need to prove in order to prove that you are correct and the other person is wrong. In response to MM, I think MM says that animals are always trapped in zoos, keeping them from the wildlife. And I think this is a valid argument to present on either side of the debate in this house would ban zoos. Because you could obviously make a case that, animals are being abused by kept out of their natural habitat. And this is analogous to an alien kidnapping you and putting you on an extraterrestrial planet for people to look at you and laugh at the way you look. And this is obviously cruelty to animals. But at the same time, on the other side of the debate, you can easily argue that, the animals are being cruelly held. However, they are no longer able to live outside of the zoo. They're no longer able to survive in the wild. And therefore, it would be furthermore more cruel to ban zoos and to leave them to rot in terms of living back in their natural habitat. A question came up where, could I know which grade you joined the debate team in the school? I joined the first year I entered UTS, which is grade 9. And I think UTS particularly doesn't take people into its debate team until grade 9. And most like public schools and other schools are probably around the same, wherein like you can join from grade 7 to 9 all the way up to 12.
OK，那我还有另外一个问题，就是关于辩论有很多时候会觉得 frustrated，尤其是真正参加比赛的时候，那么怎么去面对自己的这个 frustration 呢？怎么样？就是因为有时候那个辩题分到另外一方就是非常 unfair，有时候 judge 也很 unfair。How to deal with those？
I think you just have to accept that you're not going to win every single round. Like if you're at a certain skill level or where you think maybe the other teams just objectively did worse than you, then maybe you are justified in feeling that other people are wrong. But oftentimes, unless you are at the very highest level debate where you are the world champion, you genuinely can't make an objective statement that, the judge is 100% wrong here. You can strongly believe, and many times you might be right to believe, that you should have won, but perhaps you're not considering one thing that the judge did consider, or perhaps you're not considering that you could have found a really, really smart argument that you ended up not presenting within the round. But if it is the case that you got completely robbed, that you 100% deserved to win, that the judge and the motion are really, really biased, and that they really, really suck, you ought to have won, then I think that, yes, tell yourself that you should have won and just accept it and say, there's like, 20 tournaments in a single year that are really important. I can always do well at the next one. It's not the case that every single one is important.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. So what kind of book or what kind of reading material you can recommend for the younger kids?
I think it's really fortunate that you had this question because it's really similar to another question I got in the chat. So someone says, my son is only at 4th grade. How should he start preparing for the future debate activities? Any advice? I think that these are similar. Like I think that you can realistically start debate at any time, but perhaps fourth grade is a bit early. I think you can do things like maybe like read like novels that have interesting like moral arguments. So like if you don't have to present them in that way, right? Whether it looks like the classic trolley problem, there's a train racing down a track. You have the ability to decide whether it stays on its track and kills the one person tied to the track, or you can switch the lever to save this person, and in switching that lever you kill the people on the other track that you redirect the train onto. I think these are the sorts of interesting questions that perhaps you can try asking your child, asking yourself, to try to get better at evaluating moral decisions. But on top of that, I think it's about knowledge, because you'll find that knowledge is power in debate, that if you know things that the other team doesn't, it's going to help you a lot. So for example, let's say the motion is about the one we saw in the video earlier. It's about the global poor rising up in a Marxist revolution. Say you know that the vast majority of communist revolutions have ended in disaster. That's a that's like a very strong blow you can deal to the other team, because you know that historically these have been very unsuccessful. When you point out that fact, that makes your argument stronger. So I would recommend that you read up on things like news, that maybe you just listen to the news every day, just a little bit, or you just like read stories that perhaps aren't completely fiction. You read stories that have some nonfiction basis, that you just learn more about the world around you. Because oftentimes you'll find that debates are about things that are very proximate to you. For instance, there are many debates about things like family relations, about whether children should have filial obligations to their parents. And I think just by learning more about the world around you, that you become a lot more successful in debate already.
OK，就是关注周边世界，关注一些别人也喜欢聊的一些话题 topic，更多的去 extended 你所知道的 knowledge 的范围，相对来讲就是说这个是一个准备期，对吧？
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe elementary school is a bit early, but I know some people that have started in like fifth or sixth grade and got really good really early. I think
Yeah.
a few years back there was someone who started debating in like third grade and made the Canada national team in like seventh grade. That was like 5 or 10 years ago. But yeah, like starting early can have its advantages, but I think you shouldn't like make it too much of a pressure, because then it doesn't become fun and they don't have motivation to try to
Yeah.
get better. I'll answer another question. Having to give speeches on stage are intimidating. When you're really good at debate, is it just the training before the competition that helps you? I think it's a mix of that, because it's really about experience.
Mhm.
That the moment in which you give more speeches, you already become more confident. And the best way to confront stage fright is to like be on that stage more, because you're never going to deal with it by telling yourself, I won't get stage fright this time, right? So in the future, when you go to classes, when you speak in front of bigger audiences, when you inevitably have to give group presentations in school, every single time you have to speak in front of others deals with that stage fright some. But there are some things you can do like in the moment, right? You can try not to look at your audience, try to look over them, like past their eye level at the wall behind them. That way you don't have to look at their eyes, but you can still seem like you're looking at them. Other times, perhaps you can keep your hands glued to your paper so it doesn't seem like you're shaking, so that you stay stable as well. And other times, maybe you just have to write longer speeches, whether that looks like, for example, you write more detailed notes. So instead of making things up, you're reading them. And that gets a lot less scary, right? Because now you're reading words that are already written down for you. You don't have to think as much, so therefore you get less scared.
Great. I think that those tips are really helpful. And sometimes, yeah, even adults would face the same problem. And there's a lot of people, they think about the what um what will happen if I do something wrong. But basically, if you don't think in that way, and things won't go that way. Yeah, better just concentrate on your ideas and how to make yourself naturally talk. Next question.
Right. So I'll answer the question about public speaking training before debate training. I think that this is up to your preference, but I know people that have been really successful, whether they're going from debate to public speaking or public speaking to debate. But I think that what you should know is that public speaking is a lot smaller than debate right now, especially in Canada, where the debate circuit has like 30 or 40 major tournaments a year, while public speaking has like, I think like 6 to 10 tournaments a year. But I think it's really worthwhile to try both, because public speaking improves your ability to speak a lot. But I think at the basic level, like where you're just getting into both, they're really similar, right? Because it's about learning to speak in front of a crowd. It's really similar for both public speaking and debate. But it's completely up to your personal preference about which one you want to do in the future. Personally, I would recommend debate as I do debate. But I think if you enjoy public speaking and having to give really flowery intros and trying to like make you seem like a great speaker just from one speech, I think that's completely valid for you to choose as well. The next question then about what newsletter or radios. I think that any like major newspaper is already good. So things like The Economist, The Wall Street Journal, New York Times, these are all really good sites or just like newspapers that you should consider like buying a subscription to, because I think those are genuinely very, very worthwhile to read every single day. You just read the headlines for a short bit and you already learn a lot about the world. In terms of websites or radios, there are some podcasts for debate online, and at tournaments, oftentimes they might have seminars about certain topics. So that makes it worthwhile to go to some tournaments already. Yeah, I think just read the news is probably the biggest piece of advice I could give you.
Great, thank you. So, if there are any more questions or suggestions, yeah, we really appreciate. If there's none of them, we can just call it today. So, yeah.非常感谢 Oren 桑同学对这个 debate 做了一个非常详细的介绍，而且呢，可能在这个很多没有参加过 debate 的人来讲的话，我觉得了解到 debate 并不是一个完全学术性的，因为 debate 有很多 general 的 topic。所以，如果是你有兴趣去 develop 自己的 skill 的话，不用完全考虑这个东西是会 limit 的在一个领域。所以我觉得有更多广泛兴趣的同学也非常适合。那么今天我们的讲座就先进行到这儿。如果有大家后续有什么问题，可以发邮件给我，或者是在 Triple A 的群里边just pop up your questions. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciated having you all here listen. You guys were a great audience, had really great questions. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks.